Then on Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the 2022 Boca Raton Bowl matchup between the Liberty Flames and the Toledo Rockets, two teams that have had great seasons getting to this point. You got Liberty, who finished out the regular season at 8-4. This team, they started out the season 8-1. They lost their last 3 games to finish out the regular season. And of course, the coaching situation, it's safe to say, could have definitely had a part in that. But they're taking on Toledo in the Boca Raton Bowl. The Rockets just won the MAC, so it's been a great season for Toledo to this point. Definitely an intriguing matchup coming up here in this bowl game. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting with their team trends. Liberty lost to New Mexico State 14-49 to finish out the regular season. That was, a brutal loss there for Liberty. I mean, Hugh Freeze, that whole situation, I do think had definitely had a factor in those last 3 games. They lost to UConn by 3 back on November 12th. The next week they lost to a struggling Virginia Tech team by 1. And then they get blown out to New Mexico State to finish out the regular season. And it turns out Hugh Freeze, the rumors were true, and he is headed to Auburn. So, for Liberty, the coaching situation was definitely, I think, a big storyline in November. I think the players kind of knew that was a possibility, and there's a good chance that had an effect on this team. And we'll see how they react to that. Obviously, it's now official. Hugh Freeze now at Auburn. It's a intriguing storyline, and that's definitely going to be a big storyline for Liberty heading into this matchup is, how's this team going to be after losing Hugh Freeze to Auburn just as recently as it was. And as for Toledo, they beat Ohio in the MAC championship 17-7 was the final score there. Toledo just won a conference championship. They're 8-5, so the record isn't terribly good. But, I mean, in the MAC, it got it done this season. The MAC really didn't have a big standout, but in the end, Toledo is the conference champion. They've had a good year, and this is obviously a very intriguing matchup with 2 different dynamics here. You got Toledo, who's definitely on a high right now, coming off of a conference championship victory. You got Liberty on the other side that has lost 3 straight heading into this matchup and also just lost their head coach. So, it's definitely 2 very different dynamics heading into the Boca Raton Bowl. Games will be on Tuesday, December 20th in Boca Raton, Florida. Your kickoff is 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Spread's going with Toledo here by 4.5. Over-under's 54. And the FBI is going with Liberty as close as you can get. You don't see this too often. Liberty is literally favored by 0.1% here. 50.1%. Liberty is favored in this matchup. And considering the spread is Toledo by 4.5, which is, that's a few points. It maybe is a little bit surprising seeing the FBI as close as it is. But once again, you got to consider all the factors here. I think the spread is kind of considering, in Vegas is kind of considering, Liberty doesn't have their head coach, the way they played down the stretch. The FBI is kind of looking at the stats, and statistically, both teams are pretty even. Series history, Toledo leads at 3-0. The last game was in 2007 when these 2 teams last played each other. Stat comparison for this one, Liberty's 54th in points per game, 49th in points allowed. They're 75th in passers a game, 37th in rush yards. And then for yards allowed, 23rd in passing, 58th in rushing. So you got a strong team in the backfield here in Liberty. The top rusher is Day Hunter, who's put up over 800 yards on the season and 8 touchdowns. You got a couple of running backs there. And they're also strong in the passing defense. That's something to keep in mind here. You're going up against a Toledo team that's pretty balanced between the passing game and the rushing game. So that's not going to have a tremendous advantage, but it is something to keep in mind. As for Toledo, they're 32nd in points per game, 66th in points allowed. They're 62nd in passers a game, 49th in rush yards a game, and then for yards allowed, 21st in passing. So they also have a strong passing defense, and they're 68th in rush yards allowed. So you got 2 teams that are fairly similar statistically, especially in points per game. Toledo is getting right around 32 points a game versus Liberty, who's averaging 28. And as for points allowed, both teams are hovering right around 25. So statistically, both teams are fairly similar for the most part. You look at Toledo's quarterback situation. They've had Finn as their primary starter, even though Tucker Gleason has played a little bit down the stretch. Your recent matchups, Liberty, they lost to New Mexico State 14-49. Once again, that was a game that Liberty should not have lost by as much as they did. But I understand the situation with Hugh Freeze, and that's obviously that's a tremendous. That's in the locker room when there's rumors about a coach leaving, and I mean it seemed pretty conclusive at that point that he was going to be leaving. But yeah, then they also lost to Virginia Tech by 1. That was a gut punch there, losing to Virginia Tech, a team that's really struggled this season. It's been a bad year for them. They lost to UConn 33-36. UConn's actually had a decent year. They barely got up to 6 wins. I mean, those losses to UConn and New Mexico State got both teams right up to 6 wins. So that's how both teams got to bowl games. And if they didn't, or if they hadn't have beat Liberty, there's a good chance that both teams would not have made it to bowl season. But before that, I mean, Liberty, they went to Arkansas, went to Fayetteville, and got the win there 21-19. That was a solid win, and also blew out BYU 41-14. So you can see the inconsistency down the stretch there for the Flames. As for Toledo, they beat Ohio 17-7 in the MAC championship, lost to Western Michigan by 6, lost to Bowling Green by a touchdown, 2 close losses there. They beat Ball State 20-21, also beat Eastern Michigan 27-24. So yeah, down the stretch, you could say Toledo's played better. I mean, Liberty coming off of 3 straight losses definitely is something that concerns me heading into this matchup. But both teams have, obviously taken losses down the stretch. I mean, you look back to the beginning parts of the season. I mean, Liberty, their one loss in the early parts. I mean, they were 8-1 heading into that UConn game. Their one loss there was to Wake Forest on the road, who was ranked in the top 20 at the time. It was lost by 1 point. I mean, you look at Toledo, if you remember way back when they played Ohio State, they had 77 points to Ohio State in that game. They also lost to San Diego State by 3. So if you look otherwise, I mean, for Toledo especially, I mean, every single one of their losses, except for that Ohio State game where they just got destroyed, was a 1-score game. So they've been very competitive all season. Your key points for this one, Liberty 8-4. Flames brutally fell off down the stretch. Those 3 straight losses, it's tough to see that, because this is a team that started the season 8-1. Hugh Freeze's to Auburn. Josh Aldridge is the interim head coach for the Flames. They are 3-0 in bowl games since they entered the FBS. That is something to keep in mind here. Liberty's had some good success in bowl games since they entered the FBS. Potentially that gives them a confidence boost there. And as for Toledo, Rockets are the 2022 MAC champions. 4 of 5 losses came within 1 score. Just mentioned that, but this team is kind of on the other side of that bowl record. They are 0-4 in bowl games since 2015. So it's interesting seeing how, Liberty in recent history, they've been very successful. Toledo, not so much. But that said, let's get to the prediction here for the Boca Raton Bowl between Liberty and Toledo. And I'll be going with Toledo here. 27-17 is my predicted final score. And this one went back and forth in this one several times. I could see this one. I mean, it's very tough to predict, because you got Liberty, who could come into this matchup thinking, we're going to play really hard for Hugh Freeze and kind of show him. But at the same time, the way they played down the stretch and how they just lost to New Mexico State, I just don't know if we're going to see the energy out of Liberty show in this game. And so I could see this game potentially being a dominant win by Toledo. And I'm going to say kind of in the middle there. I think Toledo wins this game by a touchdown or 2. But at the same time, I feel like Liberty's ceiling is higher. They've beaten some good teams this season. I mean, literally just a few weeks ago, we saw them blow out BYU, who is a decent team this season. So it's really tough to predict. I think Liberty's ceiling is higher, but in the end, I just don't know that Liberty's going to be they're going to come out ready to win and put up a fight in this game, especially with all that's happened the past few weeks. So I'm going to say Toledo 55%, over-under is 54. I'll take the under, and Toledo to cover the spread in the end. But yeah, definitely a very intriguing matchup here, and one of the games that I'm most looking forward to in the early parts of bowl season. 2 very different dynamics here for both these teams. Looking forward to this one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on Liberty and Toledo, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.